You've tuned in to I Am Not a Number Live, the review show with Cardinal Sin
and friends,
where we review a different episode of The Prisoner starring Patrick McGoohan. Each week, we discuss a different episode and its implications then and now. Follow along and make sure to catch the episode in our viewing order so you can be ready to ask questions and participate in the chat. New episodes premiere each week on Wednesdays from 3 to 5 Central. The show's surreal and political implications on the reduction of the individual to a number have an even more insidious impact today, as all of our information, phone calls, texts, likes, photos, and other data are harvested to be sold and turn us into product rather than consumers. Get ready for a deep dive into one of the most important shows to have an impact on pop culture and society ever. And remember, I am not a number. Greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and I am here today with Tracy Torme and Rick Davey. How are you gentlemen today?
Good to see you, Gil. And
Very
Rick?
well, thank you. And yourself?
Great to see the both of you. This is I Am Not a Number, number 9, and we're going to be reviewing the episode Dance of the Dead. And, of course, you can follow along by watching the episodes for free with ads on Amazon Prime. Or, of course, if you have your own physical media. And I have to tell you, Rick, this 50th anniversary set is amazing. The text commentary that you created for this set is just wonderful. And I have nothing but good things to say about it. It's a bitchin' set, man.
Thank you very much for your kind comments. It was a pleasure to
I agree.
Create that stuff.
And while I'm plugging your stuff, Rick,
Very kind.
I want to make sure that everybody knows about Rick's book, The Prisoner, The Essential Guide. And this is the book that they sell for £2.99 at Port Marion and has sort of all the locations. And this is, I think, Rick, you would agree, what they sell to people that go to Port Marion for prisoner tourism. Right.
Correct. It's kind of a starter guide to people that have not even maybe even seen the show, but gives you the basics of Rover, Port Marion, the production of the series. It kind of just gives you all the basics on the vehicles in the show, as you say, the locations and the background behind it. Who Patrick McGoohan was, and a few of the answers really to the questions that most new fans of the show would have.
Right.
Rick, did you ever interact directly with Patrick?
Only through other people. I've met his daughter, and I speak to his daughter regularly, so I know Catherine very well. I used to run events at Port Marion in the early 2000s, and Patrick used to support those because they were all in aid of charity. He used to support them by sending signed photos to auction and so on. So he used to send those through his agent. I didn't personally have any direct conversations with Patrick, but since he passed away, I've proud to call his daughter a friend. So
2003.
What is his daughter like as a
lovely,
person?
really very ever so pleasant, really lovely. She's an actress herself. She actually appeared in a Columbo episode alongside her father while he was still alive. So she's
actually Tracy. Sorry, I wanted to show you this documentary in my mind. In which Caroline McGoohan appears a great deal. and it's an amazing documentary. Again, put out by Network, and it's kind of a must-have. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, aren't there a couple of remastered Danger Man episodes? Oh, that's on the Prisoner set, right?
Yeah, that's right. There's 2 Blu-ray Danger Man.
Is she a fan of The Prisoner?
Yep, she loves The Prisoner, and she loves. She's actually very insightful when it comes to talking about it. She obviously understood the show. She obviously understood what her dad wanted when he made the show. When she's interviewed about The Prisoner, she's actually very insightful, which is not always the case with family members of creators of things, as you've found in your work. But no, she's very insightful, very, very, very intelligent, very spiritual woman, and has really interesting things to say about the series. And as Gil said, if you watch the In My Mind documentary, she features on that quite prominently, talking about her father's legacy and what she felt her father was trying to say.
It's kind of a documentary about trying to interview Patrick McGoohan and not really succeeding. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. Great.
So let's go ahead and check out some of our comments here before we get started. Anti-Derivative Jill says, self-denial is a great sweetener of pleasure. I like my dream. At that announcement of the carnival, everyone makes noise and motion, but no one is actually smiling. It's an interesting observation. Herc130 is here. Hello, Jill. Trying not to be late this time. And we have some greetings. Herc130 says, Cardinal Sin, I thought about you today when I watched Lee Ving and Fear on Saturday Night Live from 1980. Those guys tore it up. Yeah, Herc130 is aware that I am a punk rocker, although I don't look like one on the outside, but I still feel like one on the inside. Michael Beacom is here. Hail. Made it on time for a change. Gonna love talking about this episode. Me too. Really looking forward to it. Hail to Anti-Derivative Jill. Canadian Spider-Man is here. Thank goodness. Michael Beacom says, my copy of the Prisoner, the Essential Guide by Rick Davey arrived. Wish I would have had it years ago. When you are showing a newbie The Prisoner for the first time.
That's quite a compliment, yeah.
It is. And he goes on to say, to Canadian Spider-Man, the pleasure is distinctly mine. It's so hard to find a good conversation on this show. Well, thank you. That's very kind. I will try my best, Michael Beacom, but admittedly my knowledge of The Prisoner is limited so far, but I am a fan. All you have to do is go on Amazon Prime. You can marathon the whole show in one day or 2 days, depending on how much sleep you need. Michael Beacom says, this show is the good conversation on The Prisoner? Or maybe he said this show is the good conversation on The Prisoner, because there are
big difference. Yeah,
there are
the second
exclamation points at the end.
Time.
Michael Beacom says, I really enjoy being here and have had to miss large portions of the live chat in the past weeks. Thankfully, they're all available on my website, the one that you're on now, youtube.com/cardinalsin. Getting a bit of reverb on your voice. Is it just me? Yeah, it seems a little hot to me. What do you guys think?
I'm hearing everything fine.
I can hear you clearly. There is a bit of reverb, but I quite like it.
Well, I could use my Venus flytrap voice. Michael Beacom says, got it right here. It is a great beginner's guide. Was just telling everyone, I wish I had it back when I was introducing friendly and fans, friends and family, I can't talk today, to the series via the box set.
Thank you, Michael. It's very kind.
That is very kind. And Canadian Spider-Man and Michael Beacom says, Rick, which Columbo was she in?
Catherine McGowan was in an episode called Ashes to Ashes, which I think is from 1998. That's from memory. It was one set in a funeral home. Patrick McGowan starred in 4 Columbo episodes as the villain of the week. And this one was called Ashes to Ashes, and his daughter appeared in it as well.
And of course,
he did that. He did that show because he was friends with Peter Falk, right?
Correct.
I was just going to say that. Right. They were very good friends.
Yeah,
they were.
And he was involved.
He directed some as well.
Sorry?
I think he won 3 Emmys altogether for his work on the show.
He was involved in the show Columbo for a very long time. Rick, I don't remember the exact years, but
I'm sure his first one was in the mid-70s, and then his last one he did was he directed a thing called Murder with Too Many Notes, which I think was in 2000. So almost for the whole run of the show, he was on it either as a director or as guest villain of the week.
I actually didn't realize how involved he was with the show until I started reading your book and obviously doing research for this show. I'm Not a Number, and I was very surprised.
Well, you should check out their episodes, because one of the episodes has quite a few prisonery elements in it. There's one episode where he says, "Be seeing you a lot." There's things from the prisoner on the wall of his office. There's
That's cool.
Nice little nods, homages in there. So check out the 4 episodes he was in. You'll enjoy them.
Getting a little bit of reverb. I suppose that can't be helped. At least I can be heard. That's the important thing.
Well, loud and clear.
5 by 5, as they say. Herc 130 says, as always, hail Canadian Spider-Man. So look forward to this channel. Well, that's great. Thank you. Good afternoon. Derek McManus is here. Hail all. And Ivan Ivanovich is here. And that is wonderful. And we're waiting for, at this point, Rick to, not Rick, I just woke up. My brain isn't functioning correctly. For Tracy to return. And I'll go ahead and put that up there. And again, you can get all your Cardinal Sin merchandise at gillstore.com. You can get your I Am Not a Number t-shirt. And the designs are by Fet for Hire. There's Tracy.
Guys, can you see me again?
Yep.
Oh, nice.
You can get your Cardinal Sin t-shirt.
Cool.
At gillstore.com, and it has the URL on the back. These are priced with little to no profit, just as a thank you for being a walking billboard for my channel. This is the Midnight to Midnight t-shirt, and it has the URL on the back. For some reason, this particular t-shirt does not want to play ball. And of course, we don't go 24 hours. It's named for the Psychedelic Furs album, Midnight to Midnight. Because a lot of people on YouTube have taken all the good names. And of course, we have the rare Into the Fringe t-shirt on white.
What about the mugs?
Hang on just a second.
Okay.
I will let the two of you vamp, and I shall return.
I think we need some Tracy Torme mugs and t-shirts, Tracy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Big demand for that. I've been really looking forward to seeing you again because I was perplexed by Many Happy Returns. I liked the episode very much, but when I was thinking about it the night after I saw it, I was thinking to myself, you know what? I'll bet I've got about 10 things wrong with what I think was happening in this episode. My wife and I kicked it around, and there were only a few things that I was certain of. I was hoping to bounce them off you because I knew if anyone would know, you would know. So he wakes up to a deserted island. Am I allowed to talk about this now, or
yeah, of course, go for it.
Spoiling anything?
No,
okay.
no.
He wakes up on a deserted island, and then he builds his raft, chops the trees down, builds his raft, and then he's lost at sea for quite a long time. He happens across some kind of like a fishing boat or something with a couple of sort of Slavic type of guys in it or whatever. And eventually he makes it not only back to London, but right to his old place, his apartment, where he finds this woman. You
guys are kind of skipping ahead a little bit. So we'll get there. But I did want to... This
is last week's episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is last week. Yeah. So, mine's Mrs. Butterworth.
I was going to share with you the mugs that you asked about.
Oh, okay.
So, there's the white one. There's also one on black. This is the Midnight to Midnight coffee cup. I like the black. It looks bigger for some reason when it's black. And we have the pint glasses.
Very nice.
And I'm currently drinking out of the Masters of the Genre tumbler, artwork by Douglas Nelson. All the other artwork is courtesy of Fet for Hire, so please subscribe to Douglas Nelson and Fet for Hire on YouTube.
Thanks for that.
So,
Cardinal.
There you go.
Tracy, do carry on. Tracy just had a few questions about Many Happy Returns that we were discussing last week. Carry on, Tracy, with what you were saying.
Okay, so then he meets this Mrs. Butterworth character who happens to not only be living in his place, but is driving his car. And first question I had was did you think Patrick knew that Mrs. Butterworth is like a brand name that's known all over America as a pancake syrup, or whether that just was a coincidence?
I personally don't think that he knew that.
Do you know, I don't know, was it a pancake syrup back in the 60s? Or?
No, it's still very popular.
Otherwise...
Yeah, it would go back, probably back into the 50s.
Otherwise, the character would have been black, right?
Okay.
Well, yeah,
that's
it
Aunt
is
Jemima.
A black character
I'm sorry.
in America, yeah. But it just was such a strange name. I was wondering if that was just a coincidence or not, or whether there was something he was trying to say. But probably nothing to it. So then we start to get into the part that really confounded me, because I really liked the episode. I was with it all the way. And then the ultimate reveal, I guess, which is that Mrs. Butterworth was not just someone that happened along and happened to be living in his place. She was part of this entire plot. And that's one of the first things that I was trying to reconfigure in my mind. What exactly was the plot, and what were they trying to accomplish? I'm still a bit fuzzy.
There's something at the door. I'll be right back.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I think they're simply trying to show him that there is no escape. Interestingly, there was a scene in the original script for the episode which they decided not to film and include, which right at the very end, when Mrs. Butterworth reveals herself to be part of the village rather than, as you say, just some random lady. She was to give number 6 a newspaper, and the headline was going to be "Plane Lost at Sea, No Survivors." So the idea being, this is our way of killing you off to the outside world. But in the end, they decided not to film that because obviously we cover that in Dance of the Dead as well, which is obviously about number 6 being dead to the outside world and whatever. So the idea really behind Many Happy Returns is they're showing him that he can never win. It's kind of, they're just trying to defeat him mentally. They're trying to break him down by thinking, they've basically they've fitted it so that he can escape. They've set it up so that the place is deserted. He can escape. He goes back to London. His bosses don't believe what he's saying, and then right at the end, the milkman at the airfield, takes the place of the pilot and springs number 6 back in the village again for no other reason than to wear him down and break him mentally, I think.
And kick him out of the plane.
I'm remembering right now what a couple of my other questions were. All right, so from the point of view of the village, okay, so they empty out the village. He's left alone to build his raft. Okay, I get all that. How would they know in any way that he would be able to, in 18 days or whatever, end up in England and also end up with the fishing boat? Was that all in the plot, or was it just happenstance?
I think the escape attempt happened because he had a window to try to escape.
Right,
and
that I understand.
They knew that he would try to get back home.
Was the fishing boat part of the plot?
Tracy, that's a very good question. That's a very good question. Was that just a random thing, or were they part of the village? Because he could have got killed because they had guns on the boat. I could have shot him, and that would have obviously, completely ruined the village's plans. If number 6
one thing that really struck me. One thing that really struck me about that was that, I don't know, he was 18 days at sea total, but he, when that trawler came along, I don't remember how many days he was, but he looked as if he was, about ready to die. He was laying down and, running out of supplies. And as soon as they boarded his boat or pulled his boat to theirs, he got up and dived into the water and did his secret agent thing. And didn't he either kill or incapacitate the guys on the trawler?
He did. But
yes.
What's interesting is that he didn't dive into the sea. They threw him in because they
he dived off the raft into the sea.
No, they threw him off. No. They threw him off.
Okay.
He was unconscious to them. They threw him off. Now, let's imagine that he was unconscious. He'd have drowned. As it was, he, as you say, he's a great secret agent. He could swim back up to the boat. What if he couldn't? What if he died? Was therefore the boat part of the village's plans all along? Was he being followed on the raft so that they knew, so that they could make sure he didn't die?
I think we can say it's a coincidence, but a happy one.
Well, also, I'm wondering, I know that one of the things that The Prisoner as a series always handles so well is keeping who's behind the village, what side they're on, who's really behind this. Is it the the Eastern Bloc? Is it the Americans and the British? But so I love the fact they always are nebulous about that. But in this particular episode, they're nebulous again. But are we meant to believe in any way that the two older British men who have obviously had a history with him are part of this plot for him to escape? Or did he naturally just come upon them, again, somewhat by happenstance? What do you think?
I think that it was intentionally written that way. Rick, didn't McGoohan write that episode?
No, he didn't. No, that was written by Anthony Skeen, who also, funnily enough, wrote Dance of the Dead. And also the episode A, B, and C. I think that it's written deliberately so that you're quite right, Tracy. It's written deliberately in a nebulous way. We are
be vague,
supposed to sit there looking at the two older guys, his bosses, essentially, if that's what they are. And we are supposed to wonder, are they in on this? Are they part of the village? Are they stringing, Patrick McGoohan along? Or are they completely in the dark? They don't know what the village is. I think the latter, because otherwise, why does the milkman turn up and then switch places with the pilot? If they were in on the deal, they wouldn't have needed to have done that. They'd have just said, go on, take him up, and then when you get back to the village, chuck him out on his parachute.
When they do that sort of mathematic equation to try to find the location of the island, has anyone looked at that and decided, yes, that probably is where the island is, or is it just a thrown away thing in this story?
I just took their word for it.
Yeah,
I just took their word for it.
Yeah, it's a throwaway thing. There's an author called David Stimson. He wrote a book called The Prisoner Dusted Down, and in that he actually did plot where number 6 would have actually ended up had it had that thing been real. And I think he worked out that it probably wasn't where they said it was. So it was probably just a kind of. I don't like to use the term lazy writing, but that's probably what it was. It probably wasn't plotted in an exact way. And of course, there are several episodes where we find out where the village is supposedly supposed to be. In this one, it's kind of near Morocco, southern Spain. In the Chimes of Big Ben, it's kind of Estonia on the Baltic coast. In the final episode, we find out that it's somewhere different. No spoilers. So are we to believe that what they plotted on the map was real? Were they making it up for number 6's benefit? Were they in on the plot?
In many happy returns, I noticed that they said it's definitely somewhere European, Spain or off the coast of Morocco.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And but in terms of Big Ben,
I was also wondering what you guys' opinion was on the two older British agents, or I don't know if they were agents, but they were obviously in the same business as McGoohan. By the time they've done their sort of test on what he's told them, which they started off being very skeptical, are we led to believe now they really believe him, that he's been to the island exists, and they just don't know who's behind it? Or do you think I will answer
that. When Rick and I were discussing this last week, I made the statement that I thought that episode was a dead giveaway that the island or the village was completely constructed for his benefit, and it was done so by his side, by MI5 or whatever.
You think so?
Rick disagreed with me. But when you see all the passengers, all the villagers leave, and there's nobody there, there's obviously some kind of control mechanism. Where did they go? Last week I mentioned to Rick, maybe there's a fallout shelter and everybody got into it, and then somebody turned the handle on the latch and put leaves and stuff over it, and then drove away into a cave. And then Rick mentioned in a deleted scene that we actually see what happens to the villagers.
How so?
I don't remember saying that, so I must admit.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I don't think that's come up in a conversation. There's not a deleted scene where it's explained what happens to the villagers. I think maybe we're just talking about
a deleted scene
what we felt might have
that
happened to them, but
says something about the villagers. Do you recall?
No, I think we were just talking about what could have happened. I think we were just talking about what might have happened. But pure fantasy, we've got deleted scenes saying villagers and what happened to them. I think you misunderstood me there. I think we were just talking about what we feel they did with the villagers to hide them from number 6 at the beginning of the episode. Whether they were all gassed or taken somewhere, I have no idea. But there's no deleted scene that explains that.
I'm getting confused by the blur of all these episodes, I guess.
Rick, let me ask you.
No problem.
Do you? Isn't it sort of implied that the village has probably been there for quite a while? That there might even be people that are generational there. I'm not saying children, but that they've had existence there at least going back into, I don't know, the 40s or 50s or something. Or is that just in my head? Do they never really say that?
No, you're absolutely correct. There's several episodes where they do allude to that. Dance of the Dead is one where she says the village has been there since before the war, and number 6 replies, "Which war?" And in Arrival, the maid who's trying to seduce number 6 in the first episode, he says that she's been there since she was a child. There are married couples in the village. There are children which turn up in later episodes, so one assumes that they must have parents and they were probably born in the village.
In at least one episode,
is too awful to contemplate. You're quite correct. It's been there a while.
In at least one episode, they mention that you'll live here, you'll die here. So there's no escape. Even if they find out why he resigned, he's going to be there. The old folks' home in the show is a thinly veiled allegory for, what they do with their
retirement homes,
their elderly, ex-spies and that kind of thing.
I also noticed on one of these 2 episodes...
And we assume that they didn't abduct those old people when they were old.
Say again, Rick.
Sorry, go ahead, guys.
Say again, Rick.
I was just saying, one assumes that the people in the old people's home were not abducted when they were elderly. They've been there for years. They were abducted when they were young, secret agents or whatever. Yeah. Sorry, Tracy, I interrupted you.
No. It just
actually, I'm going to interrupt Tracy. On the 50th Anniversary Blu-ray from Network, I'll make myself big again here. See if you can see it. It's kind of difficult to see because it's white. There are 2 restored episodes of Danger Man, and one of them is Colony 3, and the other is View from the Villa. And it says these 2 episodes are both relevant to the prisoner and are presented here in high definition. So I was feeling like I was vindicated because even though they had shot at Port Marion before in Danger Man, Colony 3, as soon as I started watching it, it felt to me like the prototype for the prisoner.
I was just kind of trying to take some random notes. In my head, knowing we were going to be talking, that weird, gibberish, almost Eastern European, in some sense, Slavic nonsense language that I've now seen a couple of different people doing a couple of different episodes where I think it was the housekeeper in one of them, and don't remember who the other one was, but
and one
they
of the
start
number
talking, and it's
twos.
just like, it's almost like a Dr. Seuss type of weird, abstract, surreal language. And I thought about it with my wife. We were watching, and I said, hey, think about it. There'd be no way to identify that language with a place. It sort of sounds vaguely like it might be Slavic or something weird, Bosnian or who knows. But I love the fact that various people speak this weird language. And I thought, when I first saw it, I thought it was just a one-off. It was just in one episode. But now I've seen it twice. So he must have done that very intentionally, just to kind of send people off in the wrong direction, because your ear automatically tries to identify the country of origin, but you can't really. Is that right? Would you say, Rick?
Exactly, and that's why they chose Portmeirion, because Portmeirion, although it's in Wales, unless you know, you wouldn't assume it's in Wales. It's very kind of Italianate in some ways. Other parts of Portmeirion kind of do look kind of Southern European, it's kind of Spanish, with sort of weatherboarding buildings and so on. So you could be anywhere in the world, and it ties in exactly to what you were saying. It's always nebulous as to which side runs the village. If it obviously had Russian architecture, then you'd immediately think, well, that's the Russians, that's Eastern Bloc, that's behind the village. If it had kind of very British
as
buildings,
they say,
think, well, that's the village.
As they say in Arrival, I thought you might be a Czech or Polish. And he seems confused about that. And it's also mentioned that the village is international.
Very cosmopolitan. You never know who you meet next, is what the taxi driver says to him.
Yes,
I've never been to Wales, so I don't really know much about Wales. But one thing I was also thinking, they had some spectacularly good weather in a lot of these scenes. I mean, it's just bright blue skies. It almost looks summery. And I was just curious, is Wales known for having better weather than, say, Scotland or England or something? Or
no, Wales is known for its dreadful weather. And when they turned up on the first day to film, it was pouring rain. They got off the train. They travelled by train from London to a place called Portmadog, which is near Portmeirion, about 2 miles away from Portmeirion. And it was pouring down with rain when they got there. I thought, well, we're going to have a bit of a problem. And then the sun shone, but they were only there for 30 days. They were only 26 days. They were only there for 1 month, September 1966, to film all the serious sequences. And they were just very, very lucky that they had complete sunshine for the whole month. But that's very unusual. I live in Wales, and it spends most of its time raining and being windy. So it's.
I noticed in one episode, I think it was Many Happy Returns, you could tell that it had just finished raining because there was mud everywhere in the episode. Like a monsoon had hit it.
Yeah, there's two shoots. What's happened there is for the later episodes, so Many Happy Returns, Hammering to Hill, the last block of episodes that they did, and they went back to Wales in March of 1967 just to film some pickup shots. The sequences where you see them walking around the empty village, sequences that you'll see in the episode Hammering to Hill, they were actually filmed in March, hence the kind of change in weather. When you watch Dance of the Dead, everything's very green, very bright, very blue skies. As you say, Many Happy Returns, kind of a bit more wintry, looks like it's rained and then starting to dry. You're quite right. That's because those sequences were filmed over a week's period in March, where they just filmed some shots they needed to do because they held those episodes during the original September 1966 shoot.
Well, it's interesting because I knew the show obviously was done in I've always thought was the late 60s, but when you say it was 66 when they were shooting some of this, that was right at the high point of the Beatles, pretty much, right? And I'm wondering, being in the UK at the time when the Beatles were just exploding all over the world, does Beatle influence ever creep into any of the episodes?
I think I remember
There's
reading
a Beatles song in the final episode, All You Need Is Love.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
that
That's
there's a Beatles song
But as far as
in
like
the
a
show.
throwaway line here or there, is there anything that sort of places it in the height of the Beatles at all?
There's nothing else which is Beatles related. No, there's nothing else that's Beatles related other than the song.
Because I wonder what McGowan would have thought of the Beatles, because I remember seeing an early James Bond movie recently. I think it was Dr. No, and Sean Connery has some throwaway line where they said something about giving someone earmuffs, and he said, "Oh, I thought you only did that when you were listening to the Beatles," and they were just so derogative. And I was thinking,
I thought you only do that when you were listening to the Beatles.
I just figured that there were some people who found the Beatles to be frightening as hell, based on they'd never seen anything like it before.
I would imagine that when they were holed up in their hotel on whatever tour they were in, that was the only place they could get any privacy. They might have watched it, but that was getting to the point where they stopped touring and they just put out albums.
They were massive fans of the Prisoner.
The Beatles were?
Although they were massive fans of the Prisoner. George Harrison actually spent his 50th birthday in Fort American. I have a quote from
Rick, your voice is roboting out. Your voice is roboting out, Rick. Can you slow down so we can understand you better?
Okay.
Rick, I really want to hear what you were saying. The Beatles were massive fans of The Prisoner? Is that correct? Rick?
Or vice versa.
Can you hear me now? There seems to be a long delay.
Yes, but just speak more slowly. That way the little digital cuts in your audio it'll be easier to understand you.
Rick, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly. You're saying that the Beatles were massive fans of The Prisoner? I'm not getting it.
The Beatles were big fans of the series. George Harrison spent his birthday in Fort Marion. George Harrison's son Danny has a band which is called The New Number 2. Here is a quote from Patrick McGowan from the magazine TV World. He said in 1966, "I think the Beatles are marvellous. They are venturing into astonishing fields of music and searching in their embryonic retirement to find new sounds. I'm always listening to their latest work and something new out of it each time I hear it. They epitomise the age. And one of their latest numbers, they sing All You Need Is Love, just that, over and over again. Afterwards, you realise that love is the thing we have least of." So Patrick McGowan was very much admirers of the band and vice versa.
It occurs to me that the way that the Beatles were pushing the envelope with music is kind of similar to the way Patrick McGowan was pushing the envelope with television with The Prisoner. So the two are kind of similar in that regard.
Yeah, I would have imagined that given his world view, John Lennon would have probably found The Prisoner absolutely fascinating. Yeah. So
Tracy,
another question I wanted to ask you, based on Many Happy Returns.
They did
once the series
work with each other, but it didn't come to.
Sorry? Try that again. Rick, I couldn't hear you.
So they did contact each other to work together. The McGowan and the Beatles didn't come to fruition.
I know what you're saying is incredibly interesting, and I really want to hear it.
You'll have to slow down when you talk, or you might try leaving the studio and coming back. Sometimes that helps. And while he's gone, I just wanted to share the Unmutual website, which is theunmutual.co.k. This is Rick's website, and it's got all the information you could ever want about the prisoner and Danger Man. I was going to ask you, Rick, is there anything in particular on your website that you would like to plug or that you think might be interesting to our viewers?
Can you see Rick, Gil?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll repeat the question. Is there anything on your website that you think would be of particular interest to the viewers that we haven't touched on maybe so far?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I can hear you again, but I can't see you.
I think on the left side there is a little blue writing collectibles. If you click on collectibles, I think.
Okay. There's your book. Production items and documents.
You've got a guide to all the books on the series.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you've got a guide to everything to do with the series. You've got a guide on the props and costumes that still exist. You've got a guide to all the books that have been written. You've got a guide to all the DVDs that have been released. You've got a guide to all the soundtrack releases. So in that section there, you can find everything that's kind of been produced about the series.
That link is not working for me. Let me try putting an L at the end. See if that does anything.
Guys, I'm going to grab my wife, who's the technician of the family, try to get the screen changed. We'll be right back.
Okay.
Robin? Robin!
Yeah. Sorry, Rick. I'm not seeing anything.
Oh, well. She'll be back sooner or later.
Yeah.
I had another question I want to ask you guys, but am I interrupting right now?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So, in the natural order of things in this series, if we assume that the order that we're watching them in is correct, at this point in the entire story, okay, are we led to believe, this is an opinion thing from you guys, are we led to believe more that people back in England that had connections to him, if this was Drake, that had connections to Drake, now believe in the existence of the island and they're just as baffled as he is? They don't know who's behind it. They don't know exactly where it is. They still don't know, of course, why he resigned and all that. Or are we led to believe more that they are in on everything and that it's probably them, as Gil suggested, that originate this whole place? And finally, last possibility, there was one other possibility I was mulling around. Well, let's start with that to begin with. Do we led to believe that the people back home now know at this point that he's been abducted and that he's in some mysterious place? What do you think?
I think we're not supposed to think one thing or the other. I think we're supposed to be having that internal discussion with ourselves. I think it's deliberately written so that we sit here and say, do those guys know or are they in the dark? That it's very much left open for us to kind of make that association. And as you found Gil thinks one way, I think the other way. There's no right or wrong answer, because it's deliberately vague in that sense that we're not supposed to.
Yeah, and that's so clever that they do it that way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When McGoohan was nearing the end of the series, and I know from what he told me that the last few episodes took a big toll on him, and there was a great expectation, and he was kind of frustrated. But by the time the show was, a year old, let's say, what do you think he felt about, his work here? Did he feel like he had this incredible show that was going to get more analyzed over the years and it shook a lot of people up? Or was he thinking it was just kind of like a noble experiment that really didn't work? What do you think his head was at about a year after they first aired?
I think he was glad that it got people. He said he wanted to make people angry. He wanted people to be looking around at the world and asking questions that maybe they hadn't asked before as to what was happening in the world around them. I think he wanted people to. He said he was delighted when people came up to him in the street, really kind of wanting to discuss what it was about. He found that really interesting, that people wanted to delve deeper into what he was doing. Mm-hmm. But by the same token, I know that he found it frustrating when people read more into the episodes than were ever intended. There were some things which were just coincidental or accidental. For example, there are actors which appear several times in this series playing different characters, because that's just what happened there. And that happened in Star Trek, and that happened in British shows like the same actors would reappear in different parts, because there were so many actors and casting directors just re-chose actors that they liked. But Prisoner fans think, oh, well, that actor appears in this, it must be the same character. That means that this, that, and the other. And Patrick McGoohan hated that. He really didn't like people reading things into it that weren't there. He made a great statement when the series was re-released on DVD in 2007 for the 40th anniversary. He was asked by Network to do an interview for them for the DVD set, and he said, "It's all there on the screen. If you haven't understood that, then no amount of chit-chat with me is going to put that right." So there's no point in me doing the interview because I've already said it all on the screen. So he didn't like people kind of reading stuff into what wasn't there. He deliberately made some things ambiguous, as you've already commented on. Which side runs the village? It's completely vague, and that's how he wanted it to be. He didn't want all the answers answered, and I think he felt that he'd succeeded in what he wanted to do, but I think he was frustrated by the end of the series, by the fact that he did have to keep making episodes. He's on record as saying the last few episodes, they're fillers. They're there to bulk up the episode count. Ideally, he would have wanted the series to a bit shorter. After the series finished, he talked about it. It would have been ideal as a mini-series, sort of 7 episodes long. Looking back on it in hindsight, that's what he felt was the ideal length of the series. So I think he was frustrated that he had to fill it out with things which weren't as strong. But I think he was very proud of The Prisoner. I think he set out to do something really different. I don't think anyone since has managed to do something quite the same. He threw down someone whose name escapes me, said about the series that it threw down a gauntlet that nobody else ever managed to pick up and run with. I was proud of that, and I'm sure when you spoke to him, I think he probably was kind of back on it fairly melancholy by that point, probably by the time you spoke to him. I don't know if you got a sense that he was proud of the series.
Yeah, once he kind of opened up, you could see that he took real pride in it. What's interesting to me when I've heard you tell your stories about him too, has there ever been a time where a fictional character has so many of the idiosyncrasies of the real man behind it? Because the one thing about the Drake character, it's obviously the ultimate individual. He's the ultimate individual in a sort of collective world, right? And that obviously is exactly what Patrick was. I mean, he just did everything he did. I mean, that's got to be something about himself that he really drew on for the character. Um, um, and Gil, by the way, I don't know exactly how long we have today together, but I thought of 2 prisoner-related stories that I think you guys would find interesting. They're a little off the subject of these episodes, so you keep going, and if we have time for them.
We're almost at an hour. It's a 2-hour show, but if you guys can go long, that's cool with me.
Great.
Just to answer, I'd love to hear your stories, Tracy. Just to answer what you said, Catherine McGowan very much feels that her father was playing himself in The Prisoner.
Really?
And wow. In the first episode, Arrival, number 6 gives his birth date, and it's Patrick McGowan's birth date. The two are exactly the same. It's his own birth. And an episode we've already covered called The General, it was directed by a Danger Man director called Peter Graham Scott, who directed several of the Danger Man episodes. And he directed the episode The General on the basis that he was directing a character that is Patrick McGowan, having resigned from the series Danger Man. So he saw number 6 as Patrick McGowan resigning from Danger Man and wanting to do his own show, The Prisoner. And I very much agree with you that number 6 is Patrick McGowan personified on screen.
I'm amazed to say, after all this discussion we've had, that I've still never seen even a single minute of Danger Man or Secret Agent Man. I've never seen it. I only knew really about it because when I got into The Prisoner, I was told, well, he used to have this show, blah, blah, blah. But to this day, I've never seen it. So I have to check it out. I'm curious about it.
You'd enjoy it. Yeah.
Well,
I'm also
Tracy,
still amazed
here is the copy of the entire series of Danger Man from Network. It's got all 4 seasons in it. These aren't remastered in HD, from what I understand, but they're still a magnificent collection, and I'm sure have a ton of bonus material, right, Rick?
To be honest, I don't think that set does have a lot of bonus material, actually. I think
it has a feature-length version of Kuroshi, extensive image galleries, promos and trailers, alternative titles and film elements, PDF material, including the Sidney Cole script archive.
It's a lot of it's documentation rather than there's no documentary on there, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but I would say
86 episodes.
This is a must-have for anybody.
Yeah, I should have that. I'm amazed to even imagine a series about a secret agent who, in the entire life of the series, never kisses a girl. I mean, that just seems impossible. But I don't know how they got away with that.
Well, that's just the way he was.
Yeah.
So, shall we dig into this week's episode, or did you have another story to tell, Tracy?
Oh, I've got 2 quick prisoner stories, but why don't we go into this episode first, and if we have time toward the end, I'll hit you guys with them. I think you'll find them kind of funny.
Let's check in with the chat real quick. I see that we have some more comments. I'm just trying to find my way back.
Rick, by the way, you're living in Wales now?
Correct, yes. Originally from London, I live in Wales.
I've been working very closely, as Gil knows, with a guy named Lou Elizondo, and he's been the guy who's been spearheading the release of UFO information all around the world.
Or UAP,
he and I got interviewed by the London Daily Mail a few weeks ago, and the article would have been out for a few weeks by now, but then the Daily Mail decided they wanted to try to get a new piece of what's called, I shouldn't even say UFO, it's now called UAP, a new piece of UAP footage that had never been seen by the world. So it took a few weeks, by hook or by crook, to quote the prisoner, to get that piece of footage that they wanted. And it held up the article a little bit, but it should be out right about now. I mean, it might have even come out a day or two ago. I've been confirmed to me. And if people want to read the article, then I guess you probably know the Daily Mail has this unbelievable website that's all around the world. And anyone can go to the website and then see the entire interview. And the reason I think the interview is important, and Gil and I have talked about this briefly, we're really on the verge right now of some amazing things that are eventually the idea that the whole UAP phenomena was a myth or a balloon here and there or whatever. That's going to be about as popular as saying the world is flat. I mean, it's going to be accepted very soon that we're being surveilled by something unearthly. As crazy as that sounds, as science fictionally as that sounds, it's a reality. It's really happening. And governments all around the world are accepting it. And they're also leading the way now to break down the walls of denial. But there are also other people that are dragging their feet as much as they can, which is why this news hasn't been even more front page, than it's been. But I wanted to let you know, because I know you're in Wales. If you have access to the Daily Mail,
Thank you.
Elizondo really opened up.
I live very close to one of the most famous British UFO incidents, called the Berwyn UFO incident. It's probably one of the most famous British. It just happened very, very close to here, so it's it's interesting that you mentioned that. There's kind of
was it a sighting or a craft or?
Yeah, that's right. And different people from different places all seeing the same thing at the same time. Some of which have been kind of silenced. So it's a very interesting story. If you just type in Berwyn UFO mystery, BERWYN, into Google,
I've heard of it.
It's a really interesting story. Yeah.
And
really
Gil, you'd be interested to hear this.
A craft. And the army turned up literally minutes later, supposedly just randomly on manoeuvres in the area at the same time, which kind of, absolutely,
Rendlesham Forest, right? But Gil, you'll be interested in this. There's a new book out that someone just told me about a week ago or so, which has a new, intense, very complicated theory that the origin of UFOs is not extraterrestrial and it's not ultra-dimensional, that it's time travel. And this guy actually puts out the theory that these sightings are the events of people from our future coming back to sort of see how we lived in the past, and kind of would explain the strange behavior of these things and the way they sometimes just seem to immediately disappear as opposed to flying away. So it's the time travel theory, which I've heard before, but it's never been really seriously explored. And if that turns out to be true...
I was just thinking about that the other day, and of course I put on Mark Davenport's lecture twice. He was the author of Visitors from Time, The Secret of the UFOs. And in his lecture and in his book, he was very well known for taking heady scientific concepts and bringing them down to the level that the layman could understand. He was a mechanical engineer, and his lecture is available on this channel to watch on the Into the Fringe playlist, and his book, and his lecture both very eloquently make a very good case for just that. If there is going to be a cataclysm of some kind, whether it's climate change or the Yellowstone caldera, or an asteroid or, whatever, it's possible that millions of years from now, other beings could evolve to the level of civilization that we have and could be coming back in time to see what we were like before, we blew up the world or stopped the ocean conveyor belt because the Arctic sea ice has melted or whatever. But I do think that there's been an uptick in UFO sightings and certainly in reports, and I think that's largely due to Lou Elizondo and ATIP and all that kind of thing. But maybe we should save that for Into the Fringe.
Of course.
Because we've got to get Dance of the Dead going here. So I just wanted to ask Ivan Ivanovich if if I am still echoing more than usual, or if it has gone away, because I made a tweak. Michael Beacom says, I have the entire Columbo series, and McGowan's episodes are always among the best.
I got
Canadian Spider-Man says, thanks for being here. Hey, Solid Astro, good to see you. What are they talking about? Boy, I have no idea. It's my channel and my show, and I don't have any idea what we're talking about. Darius Munchausen says, hail. Solid Astro says, a Gemina is just a racist stereotype of an African-American woman. Oh, Jemima, yeah. Aunt Jemima, like the
that's not exactly
Mrs.
syrup. Butterworth, but it's close.
I think they actually had to change the bottle so it didn't look like it used to. But Darius Munchausen says, great to see Tracy Torme and Rick the Unmutual again.
Thank you.
Michael Beacom says, I think the fishing boat and everything else was all part of it. He was never outside of their observation. That was the point as far as I could see. It's a good note. Makes a lot of sense. 18 days at sea, he could have been hallucinating. Yeah, that's possible. They throw him into the water. So Ivan Ivanovich is backing you up, Rick, and my poor memory has served me poorly. Hail, hello, hey. Welcome to I Am Not a number 9, folks. Check out the cool merch that's available on Cardinal Sin's web store, which of course is gillstore.com. And let's see. All right. Antiderivative Jill, thank you for joining us today. Merch, tip. Michael Beacom says, Patrick Cargill played one of his superiors, and he shows up again as number 2 in Hammer and Anvil, so I assume he was in on it, but not everyone.
Yeah, that just reminds me of something else.
Same actor, two completely different
Go ahead,
characters.
Sorry, buddy.
The casting director chose Patrick Cargill to come back because they liked him as an actor. It's a completely different character. and Many Happy Returns was filmed 13th after Hammer into Anvil was filmed. So although Many Happy Returns is shown 9th or 8th, it's actually the 13th to be shot. So I'm afraid Michael, much as I love his comments, is incorrect on that one.
Ivan Ivanovich makes a good point. Significant difference in climate between Spain and Estonia. You wouldn't mistake one for the other. And Sherry is in the house. Hail, Sherry. She says, hello, Cardinal Sin, Tracy Torme, and Rick the Unmutual. And there's lots of greetings going back and forth in the chat.
Rick, who is the actress that played the sort of what I always think of as the Peter Pan lady?
Mary Morris.
The female number 2. And where did they find her? Was she a veteran?
Actually, they found her on very short notice. Her name is Mary Morris.
I thought that. I'm trying to remember in my own mind whether it was Dance of the Dead or. Sorry, go ahead.
They had a man for that role, but for some reason he either didn't want to make it or couldn't make it. So on very short notice, they got Mary Morris, and I thought she did a fantastic job. The gender switch didn't bother me at all.
In fact, the doctor that she's conversing with and sort of telling me, you sometimes go too far, that really kind of arrogant, brutal doctor, I was commenting to my wife that the Peter Pan lady and that doctor were really scary, cold people. There was something about them where you really believe they, would freeze you to death if they could. And I thought it was a really effective casting in that episode.
Actually,
you really got a sense of dread.
I get the impression that in this episode there are 3 number 2s. There's Mary Morris, the new number 2, the observer, the younger woman, and the doctor. And the doctor gives number 2 orders, and the young observer woman seems to be saying, it's not my fault that he picked me. So let's go ahead and jump right in. This episode was written by Anthony Skeen and directed by Don Chaffee, right?
Correct.
And so my initial impressions were Patrick McGowan's performance at the beginning when he had the electrodes on his head. He was sweating, trembling. It absolutely sold me. What an incredible actor. The dialogue is snappy, moves right along, almost modern. And for once, the music in this episode is good. It's not grating like it has been. And I realized that was that way to build tension, and it was effective. In Dance of the Dead, the Ron Grainer passages are wonderful. The music number 6 here is soothing, almost calming. I think that this episode should be where A, B, and C was, and vice versa. This seems like early days, and definitely out of order.
Correct. It was
Rick, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it was one of 4 episodes which were written as episode 2. Anthony Skeen, Vincent Tilsley, Gerald Kelsey, and Patrick McGowan himself all were asked to write an episode 2. So they all did, and this is one of them. It's quite clear he's early. He doesn't quite know where he is or what's going on. I think it's obvious that he's early to the village. They showed it later on in the run because they wanted to spread out the Portmeirion heavy episodes so that all the studio episodes weren't all in one go, and all the Portmeirion episodes all weren't in one go. That's why it appears a bit later on in the run, but you're quite right. And very nearly very nearly didn't appear at all because Patrick McGoohan hated the original edit
Right.
of the episode. So it was put on the shelf. I don't want to see this anymore. I think this is rubbish. And then an editor called
Which
John
one
S.
are we?
Smith,
Which one are we talking about?
Dance of the Dead.
Which
Dance
one
of
of
the
the
Dead.
two? Dance of the Dead.
Dance of the Dead.
Patrick hated it originally.
He hated the original edit of the episode. So John S. Smith, who was an editor who had been working on the series, said, I think there's something in this, Patrick. Can I have a go at it? And Patrick said, go ahead. See what you can do with it. He completely re-edited it. And then Patrick McGoohan said, that's much better. So very nearly we didn't have this episode, which would be a shame because I think some of the surreal elements in it are absolutely wonderful. I think it's beautifully directed. There's some shots of there's a scene on the beach between Mary Morris as Peter Pan, Patrick McGoohan in his tuxedo, talking about, this is my world. My world's out there. I can see a plane. No, it's a flying fish. That belongs to my world. This is your world. Amazing scene.
Doesn't she say everything you want is here? And he says something like, and everything else I want is out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the episode which sums up what they're doing to him.
How much did David Tomlin have to do with the actual structuring week to week of the show? I know he was a friend of Patrick and he was a really good producer, but was it his brainchild almost as much as Patrick's, or was he just doing a job?
It became that way as the series went on. At the birth of the series, he was involved in it, but it was very much McGoohan with some elements from George Markstein as well, who had a lot of experience, knowledge of the world of spies and journalism and so on. But as the series progressed, David Tomlin became more and more involved. He became almost more of an executive producer, or as much of an executive producer as Patrick did. So by the end of the series, scripts were being passed to David Tomlin to look through rather than McGoohan. He was taking on because McGoohan was totally overworked. He was in the studio 20 hours a day. He was sleeping in the studio sometimes. He was directing episodes because he was sacking his directors. He was rewriting stuff. So a lot of the day-to-day stuff was actually passed to David Tomlin to look after. So a lot of the casting, a lot of the scripting, David co-wrote some of the later episodes or rewrote some of the later episodes himself because, he had to pitch in, and along with Patrick, the two of them almost had to finish the series themselves. Obviously, all the crew were working very hard behind the scenes.
Is Tomlin still alive?
No, he died. He died probably around, I would say, 10 years ago or so.
Okay.
Yeah, no, he sadly... Nobody from the creative side of The Prisoner is alive apart from a couple of the editors, the music editor. There's one writer still alive, Ian Rakoff, and there's a few of the guest star actors, but you could probably count on two hands the number of production people that are still alive, and none of the main ones sadly are.
Fortunately, on the 40th and 50th Anniversary Blu-rays, there are interviews and commentaries by several of the writers and directors, producers. I can't speak for the 50th anniversary set just because I haven't watched much of it, but I see that there are a lot of extra features, and Rick, I assume that those are interviews with people that were involved with the show who are no longer with us.
Well, the idea behind the 50th anniversary set is that it wouldn't repeat anything that was in the 40th because Network felt it was unfair to make people buy the same thing twice. So on the 40th set, you've got the interviews and commentaries with the people that helped make the show. The 50th set is more based around McGoohan himself. So there's interviews with Patrick rather than the crew and the directors and so on. So there's several archive interviews with Patrick McGoohan. You've got the In My Mind documentary, which of course is based on trying to interview Patrick McGoohan. There's things to do with Danger Man on the set. So very much the 40th set was about the making of the show. The 50th set was about the man behind the show. But of course,
this is
commentaries that you talked about earlier. I do
really
from all the
great,
across all
insightful documentary about Patrick McGoohan and the prisoner. Please continue.
Did you guys see that little bit that the Simpsons did on the prisoner?
And that's great. And McGoohan loved doing that. McGoohan really enjoyed doing his episode of The Simpsons.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it.
Yeah. The episode is called The Computer War Menace Choose, for those that wish to find the episode.
Okay.
The Computer War Menace Choose. And it's great.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
All right. So, let's see here. I couldn't help but notice.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
I couldn't help but notice that the observer's number, 240, is divisible by 6.
Yeah, I thought about that too.
So, of course, at the end of the show, I couldn't help but think that it started out with number 6's head with electrodes on it. How much of it was real? How much of it was virtual? Was all of it virtual or an induced dream state? Obviously, since there were scenes that took place away from number 6, we must assume that little to none of it was a dream state. But I go back to the feeling that the initial performance by McGoohan when the electrodes were on was so serious, so severe, that the doctor and number 2 had an argument that he couldn't be damaged because then they'd never get the information out of him that they want. And it's mentioned several times in the series, don't damage the tissue.
Absolutely right. And
Yeah.
the whole episode does have a dreamlike feel to it. And that's because the writer, Anthony Skene, and he's admitted this in interviews, he was a big fan of Jean Cocteau, the French director. And there's a lot of those elements in this episode. There's a scene where he's listening to coded messages on the radio, and that's a throwback to Orphée, the Cocteau movie. So there's a lot of dreamlike stuff in there because I think the writer was kind of channeling Cocteau and other kind of expressionist European directors from the kind of 30s and 40s and 50s in the episode. So that's why it comes across in that way. Gil, you're quite correct to point that out. And we're quite correct to point out as well that Mary Morris was a late choice. It was originally an actor called Trevor Howard, who was to be dressed at the Carnival as Jack the Ripper.
Did you say Trevor Howard?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Trevor Howard was a very distinguished kind of English actor from the 50s and 60s.
Who says the line? And I'm trying to think of which episode it was, but I thought it was kind of an important line where one of the older guys from his Secret Service, I assume, says, that's a very stubborn man. He never gives up. And he says it kind of as a throwaway almost. Yeah, I thought that was a really important one in, again, trying to get to the bottom of who's behind all this.
What's interesting is that they didn't change any of the dialogue once they cast Mary Morris. So I think the reason you get that really chilling performance is that all the lines were originally written for a man, but yet get delivered.
Is that the only female number 2?
No, at the end of the episode Free for All, the Slavic maid that you talked about earlier who speaks that language, she becomes number 2 at the end of that episode. So other than that...
Oh, really? I don't remember that. Wow.
And then Mrs. Butterworth, of course, turns out to be number 2 right at the end of Many Happy Returns. So we can include her as well as being a female number.
And Tracy, you'll be interested to know that Darius Munchausen put the Wikipedia URL into the chat for the Burren Mountain UFO incident, and he also put in one from UFO Insight, UFOs cover-ups Burren Mountain incident. So thank you, Darius, for your good work.
Thank you.
And I certainly appreciate
that. Look that up for sure. I've heard about that case, but never really read about it. So
Yeah, very interesting. Not many cases in the UK, funnily enough, that really kind of capture, the feeling that this is all obviously something to be believed and real. But that one does. It's one of the cases, because some cases can be kind of not proved or disproved, but can be rubbished.
Yeah,
in this case,
of course.
there is no plausible explanation other than it was a UFO. It was.
You do know about the Rendlesham Forest case, of course, right?
Yeah, of course.
Bentwaters.
Yeah, Rendlesham is very famous. Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
I mean, that is
Actually,
a case that people used to talk about what a great case it was, but in the last few years, a bunch of new things have come out which only enhance that case. It's really just an amazing case. I think it was over 2 or 3 nights that they had these incidents. And it was really spooky for a lot of those guys because it was an American SAC base. They had nuclear weapons. And that's definitely something.
They didn't tell the Brits. The Brits didn't know that they had
something that Elizondo
a nuclear
has been
storage area.
Elizondo has been talking to me about that for a while, that they really have come to believe that whoever it is that's coming here are exceptionally interested in anything we have that has a nuclear tinge to it. And that goes from missile silos to power plants to, anything that has a nuclear element to it seems to really fascinate whoever these visitors are. And you could take that as something very ominous, or I guess you could take it as maybe positive. Who knows?
Ivan Ivanovich says, I'm still echoing. You sound like you're on a speakerphone. Normally you don't. Is it possible you have a different mic active than the one you are normally speaking into? I suppose.
You sound totally normal to me.
Yeah,
let me
clear for me.
Turn off my speakers and see if that makes a difference. Okay, Ivan, is that better? Let me know if that works better for you. I do want to say a big thank you to a new subscriber. And I'll be finding it pretty soon, I think. It must be up here.
Tracy, when you were writing, stuff for television, because I know you did the Schizoid Man Star Trek episode, was The Prisoner often in your mind as something you wanted to kind of, do your own kind of riff on in a way, or was it only something that occasionally?
That's really funny that you asked that question, because those stories I told you about that I wanted to share with you guys, my mind had gone back to how many times I let the themes of The Prisoner creep into the work I was doing. And there's actually several. And yes, the answer is yes. I mean, I found the core ideas behind the Prisoner so compelling. I mean, the idea of the individual versus the conglomerate, sort of, and then also the all the things we've talked about, the way that sort of Big Brother is creeping into all our lives, the way we all make sacrifices and decide not to stand up against that type of thing. So
and we're losing our privacy and our rights. And Patrick McGowan saw this coming 54 years ago.
The answer, Rick, is a resounding yes. I mean, that almost more than anything else I can think of, the themes from The Prisoner kept creeping into what I was working on.
And would you say it's one of the only shows that did that to you, that had that effect on you? Or were there other shows?
Yeah, I mean, Yeah, I mean, I loved elements of the Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits, so I always liked sort of realistic science fiction. But The Prisoner, probably more than anything, I found was creeping into what I wanted to do. And when we have a little time later, I tried to do a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode that was totally an homage to The Prisoner. I switched around elements, but it was meant to be exactly that.
Was that the Hotel Royale?
That's exactly right. So it was called the Royale. And there's a whole story as to what happened, but definitely, I'm glad you asked that, because I definitely feel like it was like the biggest influence on me as far as thematically. It's also a lot of fun for me to see the series again, because before we started doing this show, I hadn't seen any of the episodes for many years, and it takes me back in a lot of ways. I mean, I always thought the 60s were a particularly interesting period of time, and the show strikes me as being so 60s. I mean, you know it's not the 50s. Thank God it's not the 70s, but it's right during that time period where all the psychedelica was exploding and sort of new concepts for the world and things. And I think it really, encapsulates that really, really well. And
we were
really enjoyed
starting to go
the show.
From analog to digital, although in 66 or 67, there wouldn't have been too much to know about that, unless you were a big, Bob Moog fan or something like that. But I mean, as we've said before on this show, number two's desk often has lots of push buttons and things that look modern and digital. And I think that they were definitely going for a futuristic look and feel in The Prisoner. And I think they got a lot of it right. And while I'm talking, I just wanted to say thank you to Hawkspeak for subscribing. Do appreciate it. So let's go back to the show. So earlier I was talking about how much of this was a dream state, because I always have sort of that Philip K. Dick influence. Which level of reality am I on, or am I even in reality? And this was a fantasy world induced by psychotronic means, or it might have been real life, or somewhere in between. But not only could they not get the information that they wanted out of him, but as far as I could tell, they never even asked him in this episode, why did you resign? Rick, am I right about that?
Correct. It's not something that comes up. The idea of this episode is not necessarily to break number 6 to try and find out secrets. It's to try and make him understand that the rest of his life is going to be spent in the village. As Tracy said, that great scene where he's talking about his world, and number 2 is saying, no, this is your world. And this
I am your world. Yeah,
exactly. So they've now got a dead body that they're gonna alter, so that the people back home will think that it's number 6 that's died, and he will be dead to the outside world. And that's what hence the dance at the end of the episode is the dance of the dead. All those people in the village are dead to the outside world. So it's not about not about breaking number 6. It's about trying to make him realize that that's it. This is where he's got to be for the rest of his life.
So a couple more thoughts that I had. This is the first episode in the viewing order that we're watching that actually made any kind of sense to me. The music was different. I fucking hate brass band and drum music, like drum corps music, which of course reeks of governmental authority. And this episode couldn't have been any different from previous episodes in that respect. The music really helped the show along instead of taking me out of the show. Another thought that I had was, is this the Halloween episode? There's more black cats than in the original Star Trek episode, Cat's Paw. And I also wondered, is the cat number 2's familiar? Any thoughts?
The cat appears in the.
Well, I guess it does turn out to be Peter Pan's cat, right?
Hmm. Go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, the cat appears in Many Happy Returns as well. It breaks the teacup at the start of the episode when number 6 thinks, "Oh no, there's someone here," and it turns out to be a cat that's not the cup over. There's a scene in Dance of the Dead where the cat appears in number 6's cottage and then suddenly appears in number 2's.
I saw that
house.
office.
So it's a great little device. I think familiar is a great word. You do wonder, is the cat watching? Is the cat out operating as a camera almost on number 6? But it's there's a nice moment where he's feeding the cat, and you kind of, there's times where number 6 is such a harsh character, you kind of forget that he is a kind of human underneath. There's a nice little scene where he gives the cat some milk, and you think he's not, such a hard-nosed person after all. And there's a nice little reminder of the humanity in there, and we try and think, what would we do?
And then the maid comes in and says, "You're not allowed to have animals."
That's right.
Those are in the rules.
Yeah,
he says, "Rules to which I am not subject."
Right. The rules to which I am not subject. Yeah. Let's see what else I had. Again, Rick, I found your text commentary invaluable. I was surprised to find that the role for number 2 had been gender swapped, even though it didn't seem to make any difference. And this might be interesting to both of you. I found myself completely convinced that Aubrey Morris, born Aubrey Steinberg, who played the town crier, as well as the judge with the royalty purple toga, who reads the charges, was Herbert Lom. I always confuse Aubrey Morris with Herbert Lom.
By the way, Rick, how did you get access to some of these missing scenes or scenes that weren't reused or shot? How did you find them?
Yeah, well, we're very lucky in that some of the crew from the Prisoner series kept all their working scripts. So people like Tony Sloman, who was the film librarian on the series, it was his job to keep a record of everything. He kept all his scripts. Eric Mivel, the music editor, kept all his books of scenes and so on. We've got the original library list of everything that was shot. Between all that, we can piece together to some extent what the episode should have originally looked like. Some of them are pretty much the same as script to screen. Some are incredibly different. Some have lots of deleted scenes and missing scenes. According to Tony Sloman, the original of Arrival was 90 minutes. So that's to have lost 40 minutes of stuff in that case.
Wow.
So we're just lucky in that nowadays everything's digitalized. So every draft of every script is on a computer disk somewhere. In the 60s, it was all carbon copied, the photocopies with the paper flying out and everything. So it's amazing that we're lucky really. Some of the crew did keep their working copies of stuff. If they hadn't have done, then we would have been the only sad thing is that not many of the deleted scenes that were shot were kept. Everything that hit the cutting room floor was destroyed. So
that is
very little in terms of
there's
the 2 episodes have alternative versions. Other than that, there's very little in terms of missing scenes or missing shots, unfortunately.
In the 40th anniversary set, there's an alternate version of Arrival on a DVD when the rest of the discs are Blu-ray, and it has the alternate version of Arrival on it, but it's not remastered. And after watching these beautifully remastered episodes that were so lovingly, made, watching the alternate version of Arrival was like, please, somebody scoop my eyes out with a melon baller. It was dark. It was in standard definition, 360p maybe. And I got used to it after a while, but the difference is just night and day. Ivan Ivanovich from the chat says, Mary Morris is a veteran actress. She plays the Duchess of Gloucester in a great BBC production of Richard II with Derek Jacobi as Richard, John Gielgud, Charles Gray, and John Finch. And Michael Beacom says, agreed, this should appear much sooner. In my mind, it's the most second episode one of the bunch.
They're talking about Dance of the Dead, or are they talking about Many Happy Returns?
Yeah, Dance of the Dead.
Okay.
Did you feel that, Tracy, watching it? Did you feel, I think this is an early episode, he's clearly newer to the village. Did you get that impression watching it? Or
he even says, I'm new here.
Mm-hmm. It's like I realize that's been a big topic of conversation about the show in general, or the controversy about the order of the episodes. But for me, for some stupid reason, that's never really jumped out at me. I mean, I suppose there have been a few times where I think, well, maybe this is a little out of place, but I can't really say yes to that. Didn't really strike me that way.
And you're quite, I think in an earlier show, and you were quite right. You said at the end of the day, as long as you've got the first episode first and the last two last, it really doesn't matter. And you're absolutely right. First time I saw it was in 1983 in the UK, and they completely messed the order up. So even the incorrect order was even more wrong. And then you had the returns were shown second, which is very bizarre. But it didn't matter to me. I still loved it because I didn't know any different. If you're watching this series for the first time, it makes no difference at all.
A couple of notes here. After we're done with all the episodes, I think that we should get our heads together and maybe come up with what we think is the best, most logical viewing order, and then put that at the end on the description box of the last episode, Fallout. Ivan Ivanovich says 240 is the number of old pence to the pound. This show was done before the decimalization of the pound. And Sliders fan blog says, I felt like the electrodes had no reaction to him. By seeing his initial reaction after, there was a tinge of a smile.
Number 6 is unbreakable, it seems. We do see him in a number of tortured situations, don't we? And he never. A couple of episodes he almost cracks. Schizoid man, you can see he begins to crack, but most of the time he does seem to resist these techniques, which even more proves that he is a secret agent of some kind rather than any other type of operative.
Well, I know we're kind of jumbling these two shows together, and I'm responsible because I wasn't here last week. But let me just say this. One other thing that I noticed about the Many Happy Returns, if you think about it, McGoohan seems less suspicious of Mrs. Butterworth than virtually anyone in the rest of the shows, in my opinion. I mean, the first thing I think when there's a woman living in his apartment and driving his car, she's got to be a part of whatever it is that took him to the village.
Yeah.
But he seems to very quickly accept her for who she says she is, and he never seems to have that, sardonic skepticism toward her. And I found that kind of interesting because I would have thought, given his character, given number 6's character, he would be extremely suspicious of who this lady was.
Especially
I
in
really
the
liked
previous installments.
I really liked the
Yeah.
twist ending at the end.
Oh yeah, that was great.
Tracy, you and I have discussed twist endings, whether they should be completely out of left field, or whether a particularly savvy viewer that's really paying attention has a chance to see what's coming before that twist happens. So those are two different opinions on writing twist endings. You, of course, have a great deal more experience writing twist endings than I do, but my idea of a twist ending, or any ending, especially in science fiction, is that the author should give a savvy reader a chance to get an impression for, who done it, if you will, before the end of the story.
Gil, you mentioned Philip K. Dick again. I was curious to ask, have either of you guys seen The Man in the High Castle?
I have.
Mm-hmm. I haven't.
How is it?
It's brilliant.
Is it? It's good.
The first season is kind of depressing. The pacing is weird, but they're world building. They're setting up the universe. And season 2 just takes off like a rocket, and it goes like that until they're done. So I would definitely recommend it.
They called me about doing it way back when, and for some reason I wasn't available. But I've always, been really curious about that novel. I love the idea of these alternate histories. If they're done believably, it's fascinating, because so much of history, is on what's the words I'm looking for? They're on the precipice. They could go one way or they could go another way. We all take it for granted how the world turned out. But if it went just slightly differently, it'd be a whole different world. But anyway, I'm digressing.
I felt like it was one of the most true to the source material adaptations I've ever seen. After the first season, I couldn't stop watching it. It was just that gripping. The first season, they're dealing with being in the neutral zone, if you will, between the western United States, which is controlled by the Japanese, and the eastern United States, which is controlled by the Nazis.
Right.
And there's, sort of setting up of characters and character conflict, but also story and plot conflict, which you obviously have to be resolved. And it shows how drab and weary these people are, and then it establishes a couple of characters that are important to the story, their relationship, that kind of thing. And you really have to just kind of get through the first season, and then after that, it's a roller coaster ride that you never want to get off. You want to go over and over and over. And actually, it might be one of those shows that requires multiple viewings. Blade Runner 2049, I found, had a lot more complexity to it, many different levels, if you will. And the more I watched it, the more I liked it, the more I understood. And I wouldn't be surprised if The Man in the High Castle is the same.
Yeah, I've been making a note to try to see it. Very curious about it.
Yeah, I recommend it very highly.
Great.
So, getting back to our notes here. Rick, is it just me, or is this episode darker than what I was watching on the 40th anniversary set or Amazon?
Oh, darker as in the picture quality?
Yes.
I'm not aware of that. The original film elements maybe were a bit darker. I can't imagine that the remastering would have come out darker than the 40th set. It's not something I've heard before, but you could well be right.
So far, I've been watching the 40th anniversary discs and Amazon. My first viewing is on Amazon, and then my second viewing, when I need to stop and take notes, is on the 40th Anniversary Blu-Rays, and they've just been, like I said, unbelievable remasters. They look like they were made yesterday. So the first episode that I saw from the 50th Anniversary series, which I'll probably have very little luck in putting up, was this one, and it looked darker than the 40th anniversary disc.
I don't know. I've not heard that before, so I will investigate and let you know at a future juncture. It's not something I've
Yeah,
before.
I will make sure to pay attention, so that when you do come back, you won't be able to be here next week. I understand.
Correct. I'm afraid not.
But I'll make sure and take notes and see if it gets any brighter, or it could have been a number of things.
Did you only watch the episode with the text commentaries on? I'm wondering if if you select the text option, whether that darkens it so that you can see the text.
I started out watching it without the text commentary, and then I stopped and went back to the top menu, added in the text commentary, and started again.
And it looked the same.
It looked the same.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I shall look into this, Cardinal Sin. Not a problem. I've not heard it before, but I'm not suggesting that you're in any way wrong, so I shall look into it.
Well, you've proven me wrong already twice today. My memory is shite, so.
There's no right or wrong when it comes to The Prisoner, only different opinions.
Ivan Ivanovich says Aubrey Morris is in A Clockwork Orange. I thought that was Herbert Lom as well.
He's in The Wicker Man as well, Aubrey Morris. I don't know if you know The Wicker Man.
That's right.
The original Wicker Man, not the remake.
William Schaefer says, hello, Tracy. Love your stuff. Darius Munchausen. I love The Man in the High Castle novel. Only saw the first few episodes of the series, but I was quite enjoying it. The pacing of the first series is a little weird, and it's kind of difficult to get through, but it's worth it. It really pays off in later seasons. Jedi Bill is here. Hail, Jedi Bill. And William Schaefer says, I actually named my cat after Rembrandt Brown. I call Remy the Crying Cat. Let me redo these for Tracy. Tracy, we got a couple of things in the chat for you. From William Schaefer, he says, hello, Tracy. Love your stuff. And he goes on to say, I actually named my cat after Rembrandt Brown. I call Remy the Crying Cat.
Oh. I've got a bit of a cold, and you're making me laugh. which is painful. That's great.
It only hurts when I laugh. William Schaefer has a question. Tracy, are you thinking of putting in more villains in Sliders?
Well, it depends how they're, projected to the world. I mean, Cro-Mag started off as a good idea, and it was turned into something pretty horrible after a while. So, got to be kind of careful about what we do with that. But also, Gil, I'd like you to be able to let your Sliders viewers know that we are going to apparently be doing a Sliders convention in Long Island.
Really?
In the summer, yeah. It was going to happen earlier, but because of COVID, it was pushed back. But I guess it's a
put me on the guest list, my friend.
Okay. The company that usually does Star Trek and things like that. So,
what is that? Creation?
No, that was the Star Trek company. I know them too. It's another one. I'll have to find out. Next time I see you, I'll have the answer. But it's in the early stages right now. But it should be
great.
Fun.
Definitely count me in. I would love to be backstage, a fly on the wall, or in the audience, whatever. But then you and I can meet face to face. I can buy you a beer or coffee or whatever. And that would be a lot of fun.
Who's the gentleman that wrote in about his cat?
William Schaefer.
William, I want to let you know that the guy who plays Rembrandt in the show, Clement Derricks, he's playing the Wiz right now on a tour of that play, and he's actually the wizard in.
No, have we lost Tracy?
He's just frozen. He'll be back.
I hope so. So, Cardinal, did you enjoy Dance of the Dead? You said it was the first one where it wasn't confusing to you. Did you
I did. I did. As I said before, I think that it should have gone where A, B, and C went.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to not finishing this show, but at the end, the three of us coming up with what seems like a more logical viewing order. I imagine if we each made a list of where we think each episode should go, and then we compare notes, they will more or less sort of be similar.
I'm sure they would. If you want to see mine now, if you go on the Mutual website and click on FAQ, you scroll down about 2/3 of the way down, where into the episode ordering section, my own personal order, what I call the Mutual order, is there, and you can have a look at that in your leisure.
The best order? Rick Davies' Mutual website order. Okay, cool. And Tracy is back. Tracy,
hello, Tracy.
You, the last thing that we heard from you was about Clement Derricks being the Wiz.
He's playing the Wiz in the play, The Wiz. He's the wizard. So he's been touring with it all over the country. He's such a great guy. We've become really good friends over the years. And I just left a message for him telling him the news about the Sliders convention. So I'm sure that Clement will want to come to that.
Absolutely. I wouldn't be surprised if they paid his way and, hotel and food and per diem and all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm. From your mouth to God's ears.
I've never been to Long Island. I've been to New York City, but only in the airport. I think the closest I've gotten to Long Island was South Carolina, believe it or not.
It's not too close.
I went there for the wedding of a girlfriend I was dating, and I really enjoyed Charlotte, North Carolina. I thought it was a cool town. That's where it took place. Being from Kansas, the Free State, you know, a lot of the southern states have kind of a different twang in their voice, but yeah, that was fun. And and you said this year or next year?
It should be this coming summer.
So it'll be 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
We lose Rick?
I don't know. Rick?
I'm here. I just,
there he is.
The camera had to go off for a second, so I was just doing something. But I'm definitely here.
Okay.
Great. So William Schaefer says, when I think of a villain, I think of sci-fi, like villains like Star Trek and Doctor Who.
Yeah, those are well done ones. Yeah, I know what he's saying. There's always
and Ivan Ivanovich says, if you've been to JFK Airport, you've been on Long Island. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Okay, so Dance finds number 6, still trying to figure out what kind of trouble he's in. As always, no one is willing to answer his questions. The new number 2, Mary Morris, isn't proving any more helpful than the last. While most episodes of The Prisoner tend to follow a single thread, some say that Dance is best viewed as a follow-up to Arrival that sets down once and for all just how screwed number 6 really is. There's a party, though, and everyone's attending. It's a costume ball with costumes provided at no charge, selected by others, of course. And as the proclamation goes, there will be music, dancing, happiness, all at the carnival by order. We've established that number 6 has been kidnapped and put up in a blandly lovely home because he has knowledge that the overseers of the village want. Then the question is, given the resources available, why doesn't number 2 just break him immediately? From what we've seen at the hospital, a place that has nothing to do with healing, these people are well trained in coercion and torture, but number 6 is given basically free rein to wander, occasional trickery aside. Nobody ties him to a chair and beats him till he screams. There are even limits put on what drugs they can inject into him. And as I mentioned before, don't damage the tissue. The reason why number 6 is relatively safe is that whoever runs the village isn't just in this because they want to know what he knows. They also want him, committed to the cause and willing to betray whatever ideals are required of him. A very Orwellian notion, which isn't too surprising, judging by the signage.
And did you ever comment in your book, Rick, on directly on Orwellian parallels between The Prisoner and George Orwell's theories and writings? Is that
no? I didn't cover that in the book. It's, it's only just sort of a starter guide, and that could be a chapter. That could be a book on its own, couldn't it? Really, but certainly,
especially these days.
Orwellian, yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
It does have Orwellian aspects to it. Certainly, you're quite correct. It must have been
next edition, right?
Funnily enough, whenever Patrick was asked about influences, things that influenced him, he always kind of shied away from that and said, because people would say, "Oh, it's like Kafka," and he'd say, "No, I never read any Kafka." Or it's like Herman Hesse, and he'd say, "Oh, I've never read any Hesse." He felt that his own experience of just looking around at the world was all the inspiration he needed. I'm sure he did think that 1984 was something that he could...
Just a quick aside, fellas. William Schaefer in the chat says, someone in a Sliders Facebook page says that Sliders is not getting revitalized. I hope this isn't true. And then he asks, does Tracy Torme have a social media page?
I'm kind of a Luddite when it comes to these things. I've kind of shied away from getting too active online or anything. My wife's putting one together for me that I've been kicking and screaming, trying not to do, but I think I'm going to have one soon. But the other problem was, as crazy as this sounds, someone was impersonating me on Facebook for a couple of years. Okay. And I found out about it, and I went to one of the question and answer session, which was supposed to be with me, and watched this imposter giving answers. And it was obviously someone that knew a lot about Sliders, because some of his answers were pretty accurate. So that kind of soured me on the whole thing. And I really have never dove into it. But I realize that I'm way behind the times with that now. So I'm going to finally give in and do it. So
that sounds like a good idea.
Gil, I'll make sure to keep you informed when I have the specific dates about the Sliders convention, and you can pass it on to everybody, okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Great.
Hopefully we will know more before we're done with the show. Tracy, when did you say that you and Robin are going to Jordan?
We were supposed to be leaving on the 4th of December, and then we got a call from the State Department that there have been a couple of coup attempts on the king's life recently.
Wow.
So the State Department elevated the risk to Americans going over there from moderate to high.
Very interesting. From moderate to high.
Scary times.
Okay, so Tracy, the last we heard from you was that they elevated the risk from moderate to high.
Oh. Yeah, because of the coup attempts. So they've decided to do the conference we were going to attend as a Zoom conference. So we don't have to go there in person. And then we're still going to go in person in June or July when it's quieted down a little bit. So that's the plan right now. If it wasn't for the sudden intervention of the State Department lady that I know, we would be leaving it the first week of December. So I guess it's going to be postponed for a little while.
We should have you for most of the rest of this show then.
I will be around. Up to no good.
Excellent.
So should I tell you guys these quick stories?
Sure. Yeah. Knock yourself out.
I normally don't even talk about this kind of thing, but I was thinking about how much it pertains to this show. I don't talk about my dad very much, but when he was doing an album in the 60s where the record company wanted him to do all quote-unquote contemporary songs, so they shoved a bunch of songs at him that he wasn't really interested in doing because they were like too rock and roll for him. But he ended up giving in and doing a bunch of them. like he did the song "Walk On By," the Dionne Warwick song, and he did "Sunshine Superman," the Donovan song. And people are always, freaked out when they hear my dad doing a rock song. But my dad chose to do, believe it or not, the Johnny Rivers song, Secret Agent Man. And the reason that he did it, because my dad was a huge fan of that show and a big fan of McGoohan in general. So my dad actually recorded Secret Agent Man, which if any of your viewers are interested in, it's off the wall. It's kind of strange. So
do you know,
you can get it on YouTube.
Is that on YouTube?
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it would be.
Is it available to buy, like, as a record?
Well, the actual record is, from 65 or whenever it was. And I don't know how hard it would be to find a copy.
Do you know what the title is?
It's called Right Now.
Right Now.
Clever title, huh? Yeah. It's Columbia Records. The other story I just wanted to share with you guys quickly is you asked the question earlier, Rick, about Star Trek: The Next Generation. So when I came to do my 5th writing episode of Next Generation, I had always had this idea in my mind, and it goes all the way back to when I first talked to the Star Trek people, but now I felt like I could do it. So I came up with this idea for a hotel on an alien planet, and the Enterprise people end up encountering this one member of a hotel out in the plains of this planet, and he's been living in this hotel for many, many years. And they find out that he was originally an astronaut from Earth, and somehow some kind of alien intelligence was sort of keeping him alive in this hotel. And the only problem was he wanted to escape from it, and he could never get away. And the big thing on the show was he's always wanting to find out who the manager of the hotel is. And they won't really tell him. He's always dealing with the assistant manager. So it was totally my prisoner homage, and it was really not even very subtle. It was pretty much right out there. First thing I found out was that the other Star Trek producers were really not prisoner fans, so they didn't really understand kind of what I was going for. And then ultimately, the new showrunner on the show was really angry that I'd gotten this sort of special deal with Star Trek where I didn't have to show up for writers' meetings and stuff. I just had to write 6 scripts, and that really burned him. He really hated that. So he went in kind of out of spite and started changing the script around to the point where I couldn't even stand where it was going. So for the first time in my life, I took my name off one of my scripts and used a pseudonym. And so even to this day, it's my pseudonym that comes up under the writing credit. But it was the Royale. And it was absolutely my attempt to do the prisoner in a Star Trek environment. And it was really upsetting to me that I never really got to do it, because I ended up hating the episode as it was finally done.
Was the idea, Tracy, that they created the world around the book that he was reading yours, or did they add that?
That's what the rewrite came up with, that whole book idea. That was not in my original story. My original story was a stranded Earth astronaut who'd spent maybe hundreds of years in this hotel, and the people that created the hotel for him were trying to make him happy. They were trying to, give him the comforts of home, type of thing.
It reminds me of the Menagerie a bit.
Maybe, but it was really focused in my mind on the prisoner. So obviously the hotel was the village. The manager was number 1. The assistant manager was number 2. And I had a lot of fun writing it, but then I didn't have fun watching the rewrites. So,
it ended up being a pretty cool episode. So I imagine the original screenplay is really good.
I really liked it at the time.
I hope
but that was an answer
you
to Rick's.
can do it your own way in some other show, or in some way that one day you can do it how you wanted to have done it, not with the same characters on.
You never know.
Show. Yeah, that's
you never know, Rick.
Tracy,
I'm so glad you asked that question earlier.
Make sure, Tracy, that you stick around after the show, because when the show's over, we're still able to communicate, and I'd like to talk to you off air.
Okay.
And also, Rick has to be going. So, of course, I want to plug his website, theunmutual.co.uk, which has everything.
Rick, I can't wait to read your book, man. Really can't wait.
Kind. It won't take you long, but hopefully
that's
you'll find
okay.
a few bits of interest.
I'm glad you did it. It's great.
And I'm sorry
all
that I can't
these
be
different
with you, Tracy, but hopefully we'll catch up again soon.
All these
buddy.
different
Take care.
Prisoner and Danger Man collectible books and all. It's just very interesting stuff. So do please check out Rick's site. And my friend Rick, we really enjoyed having you today. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, always great speaking to you. And Tracy, always wonderful to hear your insights. Thank you for your stories.
Thank you, buddy. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Great. Safe travels.
Thank you. Same to you.
All right. So it's just you and me, Tracy.
Okay.
Let's kind of finish out some of the ideas here. So Dance opens with one of the scientists attempting to use some kind of mind control device on a sleeping number 6, putting him on the phone with a former colleague, Dutton, and trying to zap him into answering questions about his past. Number 6 resists to the point of physical pain. One of the things that makes him so dangerous and such a prize to the village is that his individuality comes before everything else. You can't con a man into selling his soul when his soul is the only thing he values. And number 2 has to break up the attempt before real harm can come to him. For now, she's confident that he can be won over without recourse to more permanent methods. And while she isn't proven right in Dance, number 6 certainly doesn't end up on top at the end. Any thoughts?
You summed it up perfectly. It's the way that I read it too. I do think they got a real stroke of luck by getting it turned into a woman character. So it really gave it a new twist. In some ways, there's something more sinister about it.
Especially with Mary Morris, because she was so much shorter than McGowan. For her to project authority and that sort of, I am your world. It takes a special actress to do that.
Yeah, I thought she was great.
So everybody's getting excited for Carnival. When the grand evening arrives, number 6 is wearing his own tuxedo, but everyone else is costumed because it's all about community, and number 6 is the lone holdout. As such, must be easily identifiable. The town hall is generally off limits to the public, pretending by a selective force field, but on carnival night, everyone is permitted. After dancing half-heartedly, number 6 wanders around the building, finds the body he'd tried to send back out to sea, and learns his latest scheme was all for nothing. But the evening is not quite done with him yet. When he comes back to the party, he's put on trial for his possession of the radio, with number 2 as his defense attorney. Even the character witness number 6 calls, Dutton, can't help. He's drugged to the gills or worse, and dressed as a jester. Dutton is what happens to the people in the village when they decide they don't need them anymore. He's broken, and he tells number 6 earlier in the episode, even though he doesn't really know anything of importance, they won't believe him. It probably wouldn't matter if they did. If you ever needed proof of the horrors behind the village pleasant facade, here it is. When the group is all that matters and the group agrees on everything, everyone is expendable. In Dance of the Dead... Go ahead.
Gil, she says some interesting things about democracy, too. She makes a few comments that were really right on the nose, were interesting.
Very
kind of
true.
making a mocking, of the certain aspects of it, but it was great.
And it's not the first time a number 2 has mentioned that. Certainly in Free for All, their sort of democracy was mentioned. So in this episode, Dance of the Dead, number 6 is a special case. He even has his very own observer, a young woman who, certain qualms aside, is a loyal party follower. The observer, who comes to carnival dressed as Little Bo Peep and ends up in charge of prosecuting number 6 in his trial, would be a romantic interest in a more traditional show. Here, she's sounding something else. Number 6 ferrets her out early on, and he keeps pushing her while she gives a stirring speech against number 6's transgressions. She seems honestly upset when he's sentenced to death, even though that's exactly the sentence she asked for. Bo Peep
that was an
is
interesting,
more... Go ahead.
That was an interesting turn in the story when she goes from being like this cold-blooded prosecutor to suddenly freaking out at what she was doing to him. Interesting.
Yeah.
Unexpected.
Bo Peep is more evidence of how the village works its way on people. She's not evil, and the things she says about the importance of the rules seem convincing until you think about them. Has anyone seen these rules? Number 6 asks. When it comes to consequences, she's troubled, but she's buried herself so deep in ideology she can't break free. So number 6 gets the death sentence. He's chased by the angry mob through the town hall and finally finds a hiding place in a room we saw number 2 using earlier. For a moment, we think he's discovered number 1, but it's just a teletype machine. Number 2, dressed up as Peter Pan.
They tell him the others aren't allowed in here, right? The others never get this far. Yeah.
Yeah, only during carnival. Number 2, dressed as Peter Pan, finds him and tells him he's dead. The body he was trying to use to send a message will, after a few adjustments by the village, be sending a message after all that number 6 drowned at sea, there's no help coming, and now he's stuck where he is, trapped behind the two-way mirror, while the whole town cries for his blood. But he isn't broken just yet. I found it very interesting that number 6, when confronted by the maid's old-fashioned dress, said, "Don't tell me that time travel is in it as well.
Yeah.
Did you notice that?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And
That scene
another
with the whole
Orwellian touch, the televisions watch their audiences. When number 6 tries to cover the screen on his set, it screeches. And an interesting thing about that, Tracy, is it's true that old CRT TVs could be used as a primitive camera. And of course, the speaker could be used as a microphone. So it was possible.
The scene you mentioned too, where the entire mob and the crowd suddenly go after him with bloodthirsty intentions. That was quite a turn too. That was pretty effective.
But they had to be told to do that. It was like at a race where they pull down the flag and everybody goes. They didn't know what to do until they were told. Number 6 gets run through some word association tests and names one of the next episodes about it in the recaps.
Free for all, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
But of course, our next show will be Checkmate.
Right. I've already started that.
Yeah.
Gil, did you want to talk to me privately?
Yeah, after we're done. Yeah.
Oh, we're still live here?
Yep. It's just
okay.
Rick had to go.
Okay.
Is it time for us to wind down?
I'm running into some time problems, so I don't know how much time we have left. But yeah, it would help me if we could wrap.
Yeah, we can do that.
So I want to hear what you wanted to talk to me about. Do we have to get on a different connection?
No, I'll just end the broadcast. But before I do, I just wanted to hit a couple things in the chat. Michael Beacom said the doctor was allowed to experiment with Dutton and he is a vegetable afterward. So I think number 2 is totally vindicated with rebuking the doctor. The carnival is similar now to usernames on the internet, and beneath that are real selves. So we're also getting some thank yous to Tracy, Canadian Spider-Man. Tracy, thanks for coming today. William Schaefer says, thank you, Tracy. And
thanks, guys.
I guess that's where we'll leave it now. Make sure and check out Checkmate on Amazon Prime. It's free with ads, but the restoration is unbelievable, very good. And we will see you here, same time, same channel. It'll just be me and Tracy, and we will definitely see you then. And until that
Goodbye,
next
everybody.
time, it's Cardinal Sin.